Hey everybody, I'm out here in my garage, 7 a.m. and getting ready to make dog food. So I'm just gonna shoot a few videos as I go through this process and kind of explain some things to you. I always get everybody saying, what's your recipe, what's your recipe? So let me kind of talk you through it step by step. We start with 1,200 pounds of drumsticks. Obviously we are feeding a lot of dogs, so this isn't what an average person would have to do. This quantity will last us about 5-6 weeks, but I'm not sure how many dogs it's feeding. You know, I have 14 of my own. So it's probably about 25 dogs or so. These are family dogs. These aren't dogs that we rescue or anything like that, or dogs at the ranch. These are our personal dogs. This is our personal dog food. I do have a raw dog food diet that was formulated by me, but it's made by somebody else and packaged by somebody else that I do carry, but it is my recipe and it is an excellent diet, and it's what we make here is very similar to that. The first thing that I want to talk about is your base meat, which for us is drumsticks. The reason why I use drumsticks is because of how they fit in the grinder, so I can just drop them in. The grinder that we use is a Weston 32. We have 2 of them. They are expensive. They cost about $700. But when you're grinding dog food and making your own dog food, it pays. I've had one of these grinders for probably 5 years, and I've had a second grinder for 3 years. We love to be able to grind 2 of us at one time because it makes the job obviously half the amount of time, but it's rare that there's 2 of us that are able to work on it at the same time. When we use drumsticks, the proportion of, and when we make dog food, everything gets ground whole. So we drop a chicken drumstick in there, and I like the ratio of bone to meat to skin. So what you're getting is a complete diet for a dog with the meat, the skin is the fat, and the bone is the calcium and the phosphorus that every dog needs to eat in their diet. And whenever I feed this, it's a complete diet, short of adding just a few things, which I like to add organ meats, I like to add tripe, I like to add fish, just to get some good omegas. I'll use sardines, I'll use mackerel. Green tripe is excellent. It's excellent for their digestive system. It's filled with natural enzymes that comes from the cow's stomach, and it helps with digestion, and it helps with a lot of things, and it's an excellent source. So this is what the meat looks like when it's completely ground. So it looks like hamburger meat, but in actuality, it's got the skin, the fat, and it's got the bone in there. So the bones are just ground up very small, but nonetheless, they are there. So when you're feeding a dog a raw diet, you never, ever want to heat this up in any way because you're cooking the bones. And everybody knows that dogs shouldn't eat cooked bones, especially chicken bones. But when they eat them ground up like this, they're completely safe in their stomach. And many people feed raw, where they just take a piece of chicken like this and give it to them, which is okay. It's okay to do that too. The reason why I don't do it is because I'm feeding 14 dogs. And I don't want the mess of them picking up a piece of chicken meat and chewing that and chomping it and it's falling on the floor. And B, I don't want the excitement that goes with it and cause them to want to run with it away from their bowl so that nobody else gets it. And I don't want the choking hazard. I've known a few people whose dogs have died from feeding them that way, and some people have been dumb enough to throw them a whole chicken, and it's just silly. It's a silly thing to do, and it's something that I'm not comfortable with, so I grind. But if you have 1 dog at home, or you have 2 dogs at home, and you can feed them that way, then by all means do. You know, you're giving them a good solid meal. I think everybody knows how I feel about processed dog food, commercialized processed dog food. You don't know what's in it. I don't care how much you pay for it. There is no regulation in the dog food industry. The processed dog food is, as far as I'm concerned, it's something that I would never feed my dog. I urge you to watch a documentary called Pet Fooled. It's on Netflix. It'll give you some very good insight to the dog food industry and what's happening there. And that includes the treat industry and the dog food industry. And it doesn't matter if you're paying $200 a bag or $30 a bag. You don't know what's in it. There's a lot of bad things in it. And nobody cares except for you. So you as the consumer have your choice. Okay, so I'm going to turn the grinder on, kind of show you how this works, and then I'll try to help you with understanding what goes in that I use as supplements. There is no one recipe on how I feed my dogs. I consider it, think about it as cooking for your family. You don't make the same meal for your family every single day. You want a diversified diet. You feed them different things. I do the same thing with my dogs. I will add things like eggs. I'll add things like frozen vegetables. I'll add cottage cheese. I'll add plain yogurt. I'll add mackerel. I'll add sardines, tripe, and I just mix it up. I just change it up all the time. So this batch here that I'm making today, when I get to the vegetable portion and the other stuff that adds, I'll show you how I mix that together and how I add it to the top. But in addition, I have a supplier that I get ground tripe, and I have ground hearts from turkeys this time, I think it is, and I will be adding those as well. Just to, like I said, mix it up, change it up, feed your dogs a healthy, real food, absolute real food that's good for them in every single way. So let's grind. I'll turn the grinder on. Like. So this is what we use, these containers here, which are Rubbermaid containers, hold 22 pounds of dog food. And as you can see in my garage, I've got these 2 deep freezes like this. Travis has a big one down at his house, and he has half of this size in his workshop. So we keep all of our dog food frozen like this. After I make all of this and finish these containers, which we have about, I don't know, about 60 of them, and some various other odd containers that Travis likes that I don't like. But I like these Rubbermaid 22 pounders right here. That, you know, once again, it's an investment, but these have lasted us for, 5-6 years, and they're still going strong. So when you invest in equipment like this, it's for the long term. It's for the long term, and eventually it pays for itself. People complain about the cost of feeding your dogs a raw diet, and the reason why I make it myself is because I spend less making this raw diet than I would buying bags of dog food, because I do it in such quantity, and I do it myself. If you want to feed a raw diet and you want to buy a raw diet, you are gonna pay for it, because you're paying for the labor. You're paying for the labor that somebody's gone to make this dog food, and let me tell you, it's labor intensive. We do this once a month, and we make, by the time it's finished, it's about 1,300 pounds of dog food. Like I said, that will last us 6 weeks and feeds about 25 dogs. The cost that we pay for this is about $1,100 a month to feed 25 dogs. By the time I get done buying the chicken, and I have it sourced for chicken where I think we pay 58 cents a pound for the drumsticks. So you can search for things things that are on sale, and you can use different meats. You can use pork, you can use beef, you can mix it up. I mean, we add different meats to ours too, but chicken is our base because we want the base of meat, of bone, and of fat. So we want that trifecta, that ratio, to make things complete, and then we add and supplement from there. So I'm going to keep on grinding, and I'll check in with you and show you how we're going through. As you can see, I've got these containers that are already made. Those containers are emptied, waiting to be cleaned, and these are still waiting to be ground. So I'm going to kind of talk to you about some of the supplemental stuff that I'm putting in this batch. There's going to be cottage cheese, and there's eggs in there, and yes, the eggs are raw. And I use these vegetables, these big frozen bags at Walmart with carrots and squash and broccoli and cauliflower. And I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with those vegetables, because you can't feed dogs vegetables that are raw. You can, it's not going to hurt them, but they're not going to get anything from it. If you've ever given a dog a raw carrot and looked at their poop, you're going to see that the carrot comes out the same way that the carrot went in, because dogs have short digestive tracts and they cannot break down the cellulose in raw vegetables. So in order to get some benefit from vitamins and minerals from vegetables, dogs need to have them either cooked or pureed. So I'm going to grind these just like I grind the chicken in the grinder, and they kind of turn into a pulverized dust that I will add to this concoction and mix it all in, and we'll put on the top of the dog foods when they're finished in the containers to give you a little ratio. I want to talk a little bit about ratio again, because I know I did in the beginning, but I think it's important to understand. And the word prey model is what most raw feeders will talk to you about, as far as the ratio of meat to bone to fat to perhaps a little vegetables. And what I want you to keep in your head is, and I know this is sad, but think about your dog killing a rabbit, okay? Your dog kills a rabbit and eats a rabbit. That's a complete meal. And why is it a complete meal? Number one is there's a lot of meat, there's a lot of bone, there's a lot of fat, and then there's the organs. And think about the ratio of how much organ meat there is in a rabbit versus how much meat, how much bone, and how much fat there is. The other thing to think about, because a lot of people like to use a lot of vegetables and things with their animals, with their dogs when they're feeding them. Where does a wolf get vegetables from when they're living in the wild? Some of them are berry eaters and they'll pick things off of vines, but think about the contents of the rabbit's stomach. They are vegetarians and they only eat plants. So in the complete prey model, a dog that eats a rabbit gets, the majority is meat, the next majority is bone, fat, organ meats, and the contents of the stomach is the tiny bit of vegetables and greens that a dog would eat if they ate a complete prey model. So once again, back to the chicken meat. If you look at a drumstick, it's kind of a stealthy one. It's, and I have to guess, but it's probably 70% meat, 20% bone, and 10% fat with the skin. Now the other thing when you're thinking about a prey model of killing a rabbit and eating a rabbit is they eat their fur. And why do they eat their fur? What is the function of fur? It's fiber. So they keep themselves, everything moving through with all of those things complete. So whenever you're making a dog food, and this is whether you're cooking it or whether you're doing it raw, keep those proportions in your mind. Keep the proportion of what dogs should have. The majority is meat, the next majority is bone, fat, vegetables, and organ meat. And that's the basis for my dog food, no matter what it is that I'm using. And the other thing that you can think about is the proteins, you know, whether you're using chicken or whether you're using beef or whether you're using pork, whatever you're using. But you can also add beans. Use canned beans. They're high in protein. Just get them without any salt, or soak your own dry beans and add those. They're cheap, they're an excellent source of protein, and they're good for them. They're absolutely good for them. But keep in mind when you're using vegetables to break those down, whether by steaming or by grinding, so that the dog can get something from it. Because a raw vegetable, your dog's not going to get anything from. They cannot break down the cellulose. The shortness of that digestive tract is what keeps them from getting sick when they eat raw meat. Because everybody says, oh, isn't that going to make them sick? It's going to make them sick. Dogs don't have a digestive tract like a human does. Humans have long digestive tracts. If we ate this, the amount of time it takes from the time we ate this until it comes out the back end is a lot longer than it is for a dog, which gives E. coli and salmonella time to make you sick. It doesn't for dogs. I have never had a dog get sick with salmonella or any kind of a bacteria from eating raw meat. And I've been a raw feeder for 10 years. One quick note about recalls on dog food for salmonella and E. coli. I want you to keep this in your head. When they do a recall on processed dog food for those things, the recall is not because of your dogs. The recall is because of the humans who are handling it. They don't care about your dogs. They don't care what goes into them. They only care about getting sued by a person who handles that dog food and gets sick because of it. Just another thing about processed dog food. Okay, so I'm getting back to work. I'm going to grind up this vegetables and get this mixed up, and then I'll be back and show you how we put it on top. I'm going to grind up the vegetables now. That I showed you that we were mixing up, the Travis is mixing up here with the vegetables and the cottage cheese and the egg. And then we take this and we're going to top that container right there. I'll have Travis show you how much we put on there. And remember the prey model ratio that I talked to you about, where it's just like a tiny bit of vegetables and stuff that goes into the dog's stomach. If they had eaten a rabbit, that's what would be in the belly. So that's just about how much we put on there. And then whenever I make portions for my dogs and I scoop this out, you know, I dig in here like this and get, you know, a big scoop of food for, you know, say, oh, let's say B. And then that's her serving, because she eats about a cup of raw. But you can see the tiny amount of vegetables that's in that. That's her portion. That's all they need. They don't need any more than that. It's just a tiny bit of it. That goes in her bowl. So each time you dig in there, you try to dig in and just get a little bit of it and put it in their bowl. Makes them very happy, makes them very healthy. So this is our finished yield, guys. 1,200 pounds of chicken meat and about 150 pounds of supplemental stuff that goes on the top and is added to it. But we will start filling up our freezers. That was about 6 hours of work that took me to do this whole task. So 6 hours, it'll last us about 5 or 6 weeks, depending on how many foster dogs Travis has that he feeds at his house. So yeah, 6 hours a month for feeding 25 dogs or so. I don't think that's bad. Okay, into the freezer we go. Done. This is my freezer. Just 5 containers high.
6 stacks across. Trav has the same size freezer at his house, so this should be a month's worth of food for my dogs in here. Out here is the cleanup process. Those are the containers that we use to thaw the 40 pounds of chicken meat. They're just busboy dishes for busboys that haul dishes off the tables. So those are all scrubbed and outside drying, and then they'll get put away. Garage is all emptied out. Jobs to start putting bowls together. I have some of these already made. And just kind of give you guys some tips on things. And this is the batch that we just made, so I kind of explain to you how we just kind of dig in there and give a little portion of vegetables and cottage cheese with each dog's bowl that we're making. As far as the ratio of the amount of, the quantity that each dog eats, it's calculated by, it's approximately 2 to 4% of their body weight that they should eat each day. I don't measure, I just eyeball it because I've been doing this for a long time. But it's good to start with that quantity and go from there. If your dog's fat, get some weight off of them. If they lose weight, then add more. It's just really, it's pretty simple. If they need to lose weight, then let them lose their weight, and then find out what their maintenance is by just kind of sticking with it. People have asked how I feed my dogs, the order that I feed my dogs. I feed my dogs in the order of who eats the fastest, so that I can try to time it out so everybody gets done at about the same time. The bowls are all placed out here in the same order every single day. So this bowl up here is Baby Girl, this is Ethel, this is Ed, this is Bessie Pearl, this is Kitty, that's Koufax. Up here is Tater, Peggy, Georgia, Cute Baby, Loretta, George, Bee, and Pinky. They stay in the same place every day, so if I have to add any medication, Loretta's on Proin, Georgia is on another drug that it's called Incurin for incontinence. Baby Girl's on different medications for her lymphoma. So their bowls in the same place. I just drop their pills right into their bowls because my dogs will just eat anything that you put in their bowls. As you can see, they're pretty anxious for dog food time in here. I kind of touched base a little bit on home cooked meals, which I recommend as well. If you don't want to do raw, that's fine. There is a website, and this is what it's called. If you go to this website, balanceit.com, they have many recipes for home cooked diets for your dogs, especially based on dogs with different kinds of upper GI problems or any kinds of diseases that they're dealing with. But this right here is the supplement, because when you're doing a home cooked diet, as we talked about with the bones being so important for the calcium and the phosphorus in their diet, a home cooked diet isn't adequate. It doesn't have that. So you need to supplement. You have to supplement. If you're not supplementing properly with a home cooked diet, your dog is not getting the calcium and phosphorus that they need to have. This supplement is an excellent supplement, and that's what it's made for. It's made for dogs who are on homemade dog food. The ingredient list is long, and there's plenty of calcium and phosphorus in there for these dogs that are eating home cooked diets. You know, if you don't want to do bone and you want to do even a raw diet of, if you buy ground chicken or you buy ground turkey or you buy ground beef at the grocery store, and you want to supplement from that, you have got to use a supplement like this. You have to, or your dog is not getting what they need. Real quick touch base on Koufax here with his Hawaiian rolls in his bowl. Koufax is only the second dog that we have encountered that has a problem with raw food, and one of the problems is this food is very high in moisture. So let me just kind of touch base on that for a minute. Dogs that eat a raw diet, they drink way less water. They hardly drink water at all because there's so much moisture in this food that they just aren't as thirsty as a dog who eats a processed, kibbled, dry dog food that makes them much thirstier. So one of the benefits of a raw diet is that they drink less water, but their poops are really small. And the reason for that is dogs that eat real food, their body utilizes it. So there's very little waste. And dogs like these Mastiffs, that normally would have gigantic poops in your yard have very small poops that look like a poop that would come out of a French bulldog. So poops are very small. Poops aren't stinky. They usually dry up and they look like they're white out in the yard. And what is that? It's the bone that their body didn't use that comes out as waste, and you'll see that in the stools. Back to the issue of Koufax. With the moisture content of this food, he has a tendency to just kind of vomit up fluid if he eats a raw diet. So in order to combat that, we put something in his food to help kind of absorb the moisture when he eats, and he happens to love Hawaiian rolls. So that's what's in his bowl for him to have that and not have a little upchuck. The other thing that so many people talk about all the time, especially with all these Frenchies, is how gassy they are. They're just gassy and they fart and they smell bad. My dogs do not fart. They just don't. Before I fed a home-cooked diet or a raw diet, and I had Frenchies, I had Satchmo back then, he would clear the room. He'd just clear the room, clear you right out of it. None of my dogs have gas. So that should tell you something, because I have 14 dogs, that if they don't have gas and they're eating this diet, it's processed dog food. There's so much stuff in there that they don't need. There's so many carbohydrates, which my dogs don't eat carbohydrates. I don't use any rice. I don't use any potatoes. I don't use anything like that. And the reason why they use it in the dog food industry is because it's cheap and it's filler. And so they're doing it to keep the cost down. In my opinion, that is what causes the gas in these dogs. So my dogs don't have gas. Isn't that right, Ed? They drink very little. They poop a small amount, and they eat this raw diet. So I'm gonna get their bowls all fixed, and then we'll get them fed. Okay, we're getting ready to feed. Koufax eats in the garage. He wears a wrap because he'll pee in the garage. So his bowl goes out first. Put placemats down because, as I talked about with the contamination of raw dog food, that I don't want all over my floor and I don't want on my baseboards. So I put placemats down for everybody to eat from. First bowl that goes down is Bessie Pearl because she's very slow. She eats over there by herself. Next goes Ed and Kitty. Kitty eats very fast, but she eats in her own crate because she will eat fast and steal everybody's food. She has her own private food. This is baby girl and Ethel. After that is Georgia, cute baby, and Pinky. Next in line is George and Bee. All the dogs eat in the same spot every day, so they know who's next, they know where it's coming. Tater eats in this spot, and we all know that Tater's a little oddball. And then there's Loretta and Peggy. All bowls are down. Wait till everybody is finished. So I talked about contamination with raw chicken, and if you listen to anybody who tells you how dangerous it is to feed raw chicken or raw meat to your dog, what they're concerned about is the contamination in your kitchen. And I look at it as no different than when you cook raw meat for your family. It's all about how clean you are. So as the dogs finish their bowls, every bowl gets washed in hot soapy water for every meal. So the next meal, we're clean and ready. You know, people are amazed that they don't fight, but they're not allowed to. So, there's rules and boundaries on what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. Getting into somebody else's bowl is not allowed. Everybody's done. All bowls are washed. Donkey needs to come back in. Donkey's food aggressive, so he can't eat with other dogs. He eats in a crock because he pushes his bowl around, and I don't want to mess on the garage floor, so the crock is heavy and he can't spill the food over. Placemats are picked up. Everybody scoop, scoop, scoop. Meal time is over. And that's it, guys, from beginning to end.